Welcome back, everybody. The world was heartbroken yesterday when it was announced that Dolly Parton's husband of nearly 60 years, Carl Dean, passed away.
The country music community will always love Dolly Parton. The Jolene singers received not one, but two touching tributes during NBC and Peacock's Opry 100 celebration.
For nearly 6 decades, Dolly Parton lit up the stage with rhinestones, big hair, and that unmistakable voice.
Several weeks after the 79-year-old mourned the death of her husband of 58 years, Carl Dean.
But behind every dazzling spotlight was a man the world barely knew. Carl Dean, her husband of 60 years, just passed away at 82.
Well, actually, we met 50 years ago this May. We've been married for 48 years. We were dated for 2 years, and then we got married.
And for the first time in her entire career, Dolly is speaking out about the man she always kept out of the spotlight. The man people weren't even sure existed. Fans are shocked, not just by Carl's death, but by Dolly's sudden decision to finally open up. Why now? Why, after all these years of silence, is she revealing the truth? And what she said has only added fuel to the fire of a mystery that never quite went away. Because the question everyone is asking isn't just why Carl stayed hidden for so long, it's what he was hiding from. Carl Dean was the invisible half of one of the most iconic marriages in music history. While Dolly became a household name, walking red carpets and collecting awards, Carl stayed completely in the shadows. He didn't attend her shows. He skipped the red carpets. He never gave interviews. In fact, for decades, fans joked that Carl Dean was a myth, a man no one had ever seen, a name mentioned but never confirmed. And that only made people talk more. Was he just shy? Or was there something more going on behind closed doors? Even Dolly herself once admitted, "Carl's never been one for the glitz and glamour. He loves me, but he doesn't love fame." It was her go-to line anytime the questions came. But no matter how many times she explained it, the rumors kept swirling. Because in a world obsessed with celebrity couples and public affection, Carl's complete absence wasn't just rare, it was suspicious. And it didn't take long before those suspicions turned into something much bigger. The less people saw of Carl Dean, the louder the rumors became. Whispers of an unconventional marriage followed Dolly for years. Some believed the couple had been living separate lives. Others were convinced their relationship was more of a business arrangement than a love story. And then came the speculation that changed everything. It wasn't just Carl's absence people noticed, it was who was always by Dolly's side. Her longtime friend and assistant, Judy Ogle. Fans started connecting dots, drawing their own conclusions. Was Judy just a best friend, or something more? The speculation exploded online, fueled by the mystery of Dolly's private life. For years, people questioned whether Carl was really her partner at all, or if Judy played a bigger role behind the scenes. But Dolly never flinched. "People have been gossiping about me and Judy for years," she said once. "We're just like sisters." She always shut the rumors down, but the silence from Carl only made people wonder. If there was truly nothing going on, why hadn't he ever stepped forward? The truth? Only Dolly knew, and she wasn't talking. At least, not until now. For all the mystery surrounding their marriage, one thing was clear. Dolly loved Carl deeply, but even the strongest love couldn't protect her from the weight she carried behind the scenes. At the height of her fame, Dolly wasn't just overwhelmed. She was breaking. In her memoir, she revealed a moment so dark it stunned fans around the world. She described standing in front of a mirror, barely recognizing herself, drowning in emotional pain. She felt empty, lost. And in that moment, she looked down at a gun. The world saw sequins and smiles, but behind closed doors, Dolly was battling something far more serious. And it was a tiny, unexpected miracle that saved her. Her little dog, Poppy, ran into the room, jumped onto her lap, and looked at her with eyes full of innocence and love. That single moment snapped her back from the edge. "It was like God was speaking through him," she wrote. And just like that, she knew she had to keep going. Carl may not have stood in the spotlight with her, but his quiet presence, his constant support, and their shared life gave her the strength to survive the darkest chapters. And now, with Carl gone, Dolly's pain has resurfaced, along with secrets she never thought she'd have to confront again. For decades, Dolly kept their love story behind a curtain. But Carl's passing at 82 changed everything. For the first time, she stepped into the open and spoke about the man who had been her constant for nearly 60 years. and what she said left the world speechless. In a rare and emotional statement, Dolly described their bond as something words couldn't fully capture. "Carl and I shared so many beautiful years together," she wrote. "Our love, it will never truly end." She didn't just grieve privately, she poured that grief into music. She released a tribute song titled "If You Hadn't Been There," and it revealed more than fans ever expected. In it, Dolly speaks directly to Carl, reflecting on a lifetime of love, loyalty, and quiet strength. The lyrics weren't just heartbreaking, they were raw. "If you hadn't been there, where would I be?" she sings. "You made me dream more than I dared." It was the kind of confession Dolly rarely made publicly, an unfiltered window into the love story that had always been kept behind closed doors. And as the world listened, one thing became clear. The man no one ever saw had been her entire world all along. Long before the awards, the fame, or the swirling rumors, there was just a girl with big dreams and a quiet man who saw something special in her. Dolly met Carl Dean in 1964 outside a Nashville laundromat on her very first day in town. She was 18, he was 21, and according to Carl, the moment he saw her, he knew, "I'm gonna marry that girl." He wasn't bluffing. Within 2 years, they tied the knot, but not with the glitz or cameras you'd expect. In fact, their wedding was so private, it bordered on secret. Carl didn't want the attention, and Dolly's manager begged her not to do it at all, warning it could hurt her rising career. So they skipped the headlines and eloped quietly in Georgia, with only Dolly's mother and a preacher present. No fans, no media, just love. "I bought a little dress," Dolly later recalled. "Mama got me a Bible with flowers on it, and we got married on a Monday." Their honeymoon? A quick drive back to drop Mama at the bus station before heading home. There was no luxury, no fairy tale glamour, just two people choosing each other, away from the noise of the world. And it was that decision, to protect their love from the spotlight, that defined everything that came next. Carl Dean gave fame exactly one chance, and that was more than enough for him. Early in Dolly's career, he agreed to attend one industry event, an award dinner where she was being honored for her songwriting. He put on a tux, walked the red carpet, sat through the speeches, and watched her accept her award. It was a proud moment, but it also confirmed everything he already knew. As they drove home that night, Carl turned to Dolly and said, "I want you to have everything you've ever dreamed of, but don't you ever ask me to go to one of them dang things again." And she never did. From that moment on, Carl disappeared from the public eye completely. No premieres, no interviews, no backstage cameos. He didn't even pose for official photos. He became the invisible backbone to Dolly's empire, supporting her every move without ever stepping into the spotlight himself. To some, it seemed strange. To others, suspicious. But to Dolly, it was simple. Carl loved her. Not the fame, not the flash, not the life that came with it. And in a world that devours celebrity relationships, that kind of quiet loyalty became one of the greatest mysteries of all. While Dolly was soaring to the top of the music charts, her personal life was falling apart behind the scenes. Fame came fast, but so did the pressure. And eventually, the toll on her body and mind became too heavy to hide. In the early 80s, at the peak of her success, Dolly's health began to spiral. She ignored the warning signs: constant pain, fatigue, emotional burnout. She kept performing, smiling for cameras, pretending everything was fine. Until one night in Indianapolis, she collapsed on stage. Doctors discovered she was suffering from endometriosis, a serious condition that caused internal bleeding and unbearable pain. At just 36, she was forced to undergo a partial hysterectomy, an irreversible procedure that meant she could never have children of her own. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in her life. Depression hit hard. She turned to food, to alcohol, to anything that could numb the pain. She admitted later that she didn't care whether she lived or died. But Carl never left. He didn't make headlines. He didn't do interviews. He didn't need to. While Dolly was falling apart, he stood quietly by her side, stable, solid, and unwavering. He wasn't the kind of man to fix everything with words. He was just there. And sometimes, just being there is what saves a person. Even the most unshakable love stories have their cracks, and Dolly's wasn't immune. In a rare and vulnerable moment during a 1986 interview, she admitted something that stunned fans. She'd once been caught up in what she called an affair of the heart. She never named names, never gave details, but her silence spoke volumes. "It nearly broke me," she said. "I cried an ocean." Was it emotional? Romantic? A betrayal? She never confirmed, but the damage was real. And while tabloids speculated wildly, Dolly kept the mystery alive. "I've got to keep some mystery," she laughed. But people weren't laughing. They were questioning everything. Was Carl aware? Had they quietly separated? Was their marriage built on loyalty or on something more complicated? At the time, Dolly insisted they'd never split. "There's no man in this world who could ever compare to my husband," she told people in 1982. She made it clear, no matter the challenges, she was staying, always. Even her sense of humor couldn't hide the tension. During a sit-down with Barbara Walters, she joked that being home with Carl for months nearly busted their relationship. "I'm happy to be leaving," she said with a grin. "And he's happy for me to be leaving too." They flirted with the edge. They teased the truth. But deep down, they always returned to each other. And maybe that's what made it real. Messy, imperfect, but lasting. Before she was an icon, before the rhinestones and record deals, Dolly was just a teenage girl with a suitcase full of dreams and dirty laundry, literally. On her first day in Nashville, she walked into a laundromat to wash her clothes. That's where she met Carl Dean. He saw her, smiled, and called out. She waved back. Being from the country, she talked to everyone. But Carl, he wasn't just anyone. "My first thought was, I'm gonna marry that girl," he later said. "My second thought was, Lord, she's good looking." And just like that, his life began. He showed up every day that week, sitting with her on the porch while she babysat her cousin. No fancy dates, no grand gestures, just simple, quiet moments that turned into something more. The first time he took her out, he brought her straight to meet his parents. He already knew. The proposal wasn't traditional. Carl just told her, "You're gonna have to move closer to town, or we're gonna have to get married." And Dolly, never one for overthinking, said yes. That moment, unexpected, unplanned, sparked one of the most enduring and misunderstood love stories in show business. While the world chased headlines, Carl chased peace. He didn't want the cameras. He wanted her. And for all the glitz Dolly carried with her into stardom, she always came back to where it started. A laundromat, a quiet man, and a promise that outlasted the spotlight. With Carl Dean's passing, the mystery surrounding his life has only deepened. For decades, he stayed completely out of the spotlight, never seen, never heard, and fans never stopped asking, why? Some believed their love story was too perfect to be real. Others thought it was more complicated than Dolly let on. Now, with Dolly finally breaking her silence, we've seen a different side of that love. Her words and tribute song paint a picture of quiet loyalty and lasting devotion. But even now, whispers continue. Was Carl simply a private man, or was he hiding from something more? The truth is, Dolly never needed the world to understand. She just needed Carl. And maybe that's the most powerful love story of all. One that didn't beg for attention but lasted a lifetime in the background. And while the world keeps guessing, Dolly already said everything she needed to.